Yo, what's up? Teddy and Sense, how you doing, brother? Miss Lady, how you doing? I'm gonna have to find a way to get logged back into my Facebook account one of these days. Man, no complaints, man. No complaints. No complaints. Trying to find that second win. We're gonna start out with a little preference talk at the beginning of the night. So we get everybody riled up before we get into the serious topic. Evidently Mario got the ladies hot. I'm like, he ain't do nothing. I had to go research what he did. It's like, I don't think the guy did anything. Oh, where we at? Talent acquisition tip. It is the holidays. So just want to let you know, not too many people are going to be hiring right now. But good news is Q1 coming up. So you might start seeing a lot of jobs pop up on job boards. Just don't expect them to move fast. All right, let's get started tonight. Let's just go and hop into Mario. So Mario was on Cam Newton's podcast. And Cam Newton, I don't understand. Now, I will say this. I didn't understand the context of why Cam asked Mario this, but I saw it was trending on Twitter. Then once I seen it was posted here, I was like, okay, evidently this is the thing. Like, let's just discuss it for a minute. So anyway, what's going on is that Cam Newton asked Mario, what is his relationship like with black women? And I'm not going to lie here. Let's let it play, and I'll let you guys, see what you hear.
Have anything against black women?
No, sir. Amen. No, sir, I don't. Never have.
What is your relationship like with black women?
That's a great question. The ones that matter to me, my grandmother, my mother, my family members, my aunts, a few of the black women that I have dated in the past, my relationship with them were all different. I can't compare one to the other. I can say that my grandmother was my hero. She was the contrast in my life when it came to understanding the importance of a black woman, the strength of a black woman, the soul of a black woman, the relationship.
Do you have anything against?
We had a very toxic relationship because I didn't understand her struggles with whatever she was facing, and I just wanted her to love me the way I wanted her to love me as a mom to a son. And because I couldn't fix that, and because I couldn't change her destiny in the way that she decided that she wanted to live her life, there was resentment, anger built towards her and the idea of trusting her, trusting women in general. And I still face and deal with that to this day. And it's something that I deal with daily. And it affects the way that I see relationships, partnerships, marriage, the idea of marriage, which I don't see myself ever getting married. Affects the way that I see relationships, partnerships, marriage, the idea of marriage, which I don't see myself ever getting married. Affects the way that I...
All right, so this is Mario. Cam asked this question. Anyway, this was trending. So, and this popped into my feed, had someone send it to me. I was like, we could discuss it. Mario, I don't know if anybody knows kind of Mario's background or Mario's story, but part of his story is I believe his mom wasn't really there for him due to substance abuse, and that's kind of affecting, I guess, the way that he sees women, which is honestly that's most of us, right? Like most of us, our parents' relationship impact us in some sort of way. It's not unusual. I'm not going to say that didn't happen, but by the time, I always say this, you have until you about 35 to really be able to blame things on how you grew up. Because unfortunately, most of the time, the way that you're going to respond to life is due in part to how you were around your family. Most of the time, it's not a clown in a white van that kidnaps you and traumatizes you or creates your view of the world. Most of the time, it's going to be people that you grow up with, people that love you. So I don't blame Mario for saying, hey, you know what? I didn't want to get married, due in part to how I saw love or how I was raised. But Mario's 39 now. And y'all know here I'm always going to say like as men, there has to be a standard, right? The standard that we have for ourselves, not a standard for anybody else, but for ourselves. So I played this because, like I said, the ladies were going in on Mario. Mario, long story short, I found out Mario is having a baby by a Latina. I don't know if he made any anti-black comments or if, this is just people saying, you know what, we don't like the fact that this black singer that made this music, singing to black women has now had a baby by a woman that's not Afro-American. I don't know what's the case in that. I'm not that tapped into the woman sphere. But what I will say is, we have to look at Mario and understand how he was raised, but mostly seemed like he was raised by his grandmother with the lack of a mother. And I can't really applaud him for saying, I'm going to have a baby, but I'm never going to get married, right? I can't really applaud him for that. But what I will say is that, he is allowed to have a preference, right? Whatever that preference is. I mean, like, let's not forget. And this is why, let me see if I can find this real quick here. This is why I really can't allow this idea that men, as black men, just can no longer have preferences because, let's see here. Where is my Twitter account? Here we go. Boom. Profile. Let's see if I think I retweeted this. All right. There we go. This is where we're gonna go right here. This is low key why I really can't go in on brothers having preferences anymore. This is all the aggregate data for online dating. I wish I had the book around here somewhere to tell you when this book was written. But this is information that came from the Dating Divide. Let's see here, the Dating Divide. Well, try to see when this book was written. This book was written in 2021. Okay, so it's fairly recent for information. And it was written by 3 professors that studies the dynamics of online dating and how race influenced online dating. And this chart right here stood out to me. And this is why I really can't allow bros to get beat up for, the quote unquote, you're not dating sisters anymore. All right, this right here is a graph. It says for every message black men send to black women, this is how black men, in the middle right here, this is how black men respond to black women. It's almost at twice the rate. Now, this isn't swipe rates. This is response rates. So this is interaction, right? So this is like who you're ghosting online, right? So when there's a sister there, brothers is responding at a rate almost twice as high as Latinas. Definitely double twice as high as Asian women, and black men are responding to white women the least online. All right. This is data. This is not me making this up. Okay. This is just me showing why social media cannot be where you get your virtual signaling from. All right. Below this chart, it says this is going to be for every message black women respond to black men. Now, again, this is not swipe rates. This is response rates. This is people talking, right, to one another. All right. My sisters was responding at the highest rate over here to these guys. That's who they respond to the most over here. White men. All right. We're close, but we're not first. This is first. Let's see here. Who's second? Latino man was second. Asian men was third. Black men is fourth, right? In the privacy of their own homes, this is what everybody is doing. I am pointing this out because I'm about to play a video and I want you to really have the context of what's actually happening in the real world, right? This is the real world, right? This is black men responding to black women at twice the rate that they respond to the second highest, which is Latino women. This is response rates. Again, this is not swipe rates. This is response. This is somebody responding to you and you responding back to them. All right. This is black women. First, white men. Second, I think Latino men might be second, maybe Asian men, but they're close, right? Third, black men. All right. This is from The Dating Divide. This is a book that was written, that was published in 2021, right? Right in the middle of COVID. Don't shoot the messenger here, okay? Just passing along information. I'm going to piss everybody off. Then we're going to get to one of the old clips. Where is it at? Here we go. All right. Boom. So, I was like, what is everybody upset about? But here it goes right here.
I have to air him out. Listen, because I used to be out in these streets way back in the day and thoroughly enjoyed my 20s, I have a lot of celebrities.
All right. So this is Mario claps back at critics that claim he doesn't like black women. I'm so tired of the black women slander in the comments. How about how I don't like black women? So this was Mario response, and this is a TikToker that's doing a response. Again, this is what I was sent right here. All right. And he's basically saying that, like, yo, that's not true. Right. This is a TikToker that's saying back in the day she was in these streets. She kind of know what's going on. Let's let it play.
But I don't really believe in talking too much and telling a lot of stuff. Like, it ain't really my thing. I keep my mouth closed. OK, but Mario triggered me. So I'm about to tell it. So it was circa 2010, 2011, something like that. I ran into him in Lucky Lounge in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, if you've ever been to Lucky Lounge, you know there was an upstairs. You know, it went upstairs, okay? The upstairs this particular night was VIP. So we're up there, and in the middle of the floor, there's a circular bar, okay? It's a circular bar with one or maybe two bartenders. Mario was standing at the circular bar with a plate of food. I don't really remember what he had on his plate because I don't have a photographic memory, but I do have perfect verbal recall. He was standing at the circular bar with a gang of white girls, okay? It was at least like a dozen white girls surrounding him, and he was so kind and so polite to all of these white girls. I mean, he was just chumming it up with them, had a big smile on his face when he was talking to them. He loved every minute of it. So he was leaning up on the bar like this, and there was a little space right between him and the next person at the bar. So I walked up between him and the other person to order my drink. It's a bar. Before I could even say, Amaretto sour, please, Mario turns around with such disgust on his face and says to me, I'm just trying to eat my food. Can you go away from me, please?
All right.
I looked at him and said, nigga, I'm trying to order my drink. He just had the nastiest and most disgusted look on his face. Like he couldn't believe that my black ass was breathing the same air as he was. He couldn't believe I dare step next to him. Now, mind you, a friend of mine who's named Jeremy was the bartender that night, and he was inside the circular bar. He hears the entire thing and, like, looks at me, rolls his eyes. He's a white guy. He's like a gay white guy. He looks at me, then looks at Mario, rolls his eyes, and goes, Portia, do you want your normal amaretto sour? And I was like, yes, please, Jeremy. Thank you. And to know that I'm just simply trying to get my drink. I wasn't bothering this man. You're in a public space by the bar. It's not like you're in your VIP section. There was no VIP sections at Lucky Lounge upstairs at that time. It was just one VIP room. You're in the VIP room, standing by the bar. People are going to come up and get drinks. Why is it a problem that my black ass was standing next to you? So with that being said, I can confirm that Mario...
So basically, long story short, Mario's accused of being a colorist, and that's why everybody is upset. All right, I am going to say this, right? When we put the data out, right? When we see the actual data, right? When we see
100% hates black women.
And basically, she said that he hates black women. When we see the data, that was all day naps. That's all the information that they was able to get from. It wasn't one day nap. I forget the total number. They actually have it in the. Index of like everything that they used, right? I'm going to shoot the brother some bail right now because, like I said, this came across my timeline. I've seen it several times now. All right, this is one of those every accusation is a confession type thing. I don't know if Mario's a colorist, right? We do know that he doesn't want to get married, so we do know he hasn't dealt with, trauma from his childhood. So I don't know if he's running away from not dating someone that looks like his mother. I don't know, right? But what we can say is at some point men are going to have preferences, and there's nothing wrong with men deciding to do that, right? You could say, look, there's a problem with, if you only want colorists or if you only want, women that are, light skinned versus women that are dark skinned, even though we don't say the reverse. We don't say the reverse about men that want dark skinned women. But if men are making this decision, it's just a preference. And based upon the dating divide, everybody else is kind of allowed to make this decision. Again, except for one demographic. One demographic decides that they have a preference, and all of a sudden it's, you're a colorist or you're a misandrist. And it goes back to last week's pod that we discussed where it was like, hey, if I disagree with you, that does not make me a misogynist if you're a woman, right? If I disagree with you, there's a conversation to be had. That's it. Me disagreeing with you has nothing to do with you being a lady or not a lady, a woman, female. So, to my friends that sent me that, I don't know if Mario's a colorist or not, but if he is, based upon the data, everybody else is getting to decide what they want. We got to kind of let bros decide what they want. The numbers aren't even close. So yeah, to answer your question, Mimi, it wasn't one day nap. It was all the information that they could get from several different day naps. And I mean, we don't have to pretend that there's 100 day naps, right? There's Hinge, there's Tinder, there's Bumble. I don't know, Plenty of Fish. Like, what else is out there? Match. It's not 100 of them. I mean, you're going to get a pretty decent sample size once you get past, the top 4 or 5. So if you getting data from, even they got data from 2 out of the top 5, That's where it's coming from. You know, sisters aren't congregating on Black Planet anymore. Like, you know, you're not finding the sisters on Black Planet. Like they're on Hinge or Bumble or Tinder. They're where everybody else is, or Match or whatever else. But hey, we did have some news to drop. Larry Summers, he used to be the president of Harvard. I think he just teaches there now, but he was on the board of OpenAI, and he has had to step down because he was sending emails back and forth with Epstein. And it looked like everybody sending emails back and forth with Epstein. And we actually said this on yesterday's pod that I totally do not expect any information to come out from this. I think they're going to release a 28-page redacted version of something that semi-implicates maybe some political enemy that they have. But I don't think it's going to be any real names on there at all. Let me see if I can find this article on Larry Summers real quick, because it was actually interesting. Larry Summers. I can't find it. All right, I'm not gonna waste time looking for it. But yeah, but anyway, he's having to step back, and I don't think it's a big deal that they're releasing it, because again, I don't expect it to be true, fair, or balanced. But I will say this: if they really wanted to get to the root cause of this, just release the flight logs of the people that took his plane down there. Like, that's really all we need. Like, those are the people who didn't care. People that got on his plane and went down there, just release the flight logs. We don't need the emails. But with that being said, since we're talking about politics, I had a conversation probably about 2 weeks ago on another brother's pod. And one of the things that I said on there is that black people, we need to become more political. We cannot, and when I say black people, I mean black Americans, like Afro-Americans, descendants of enslaved prisoners of war from the Gold Coast Kingdom of Africa. We cannot afford to be apolitical because we don't have a homeland, right? We don't have a place where we can just say, you know, if it doesn't work here, I'm gonna head back home. We ain't got that. We do not have that. So what we're going to have to do is actually be more political. And part of that policy in voting is understanding that if we don't vote and the other side wins, when they make decisions, that is also democracy. Right? Democracy is not when your side wins and they can do things, even if you think your side is better, right? Democracy is when the other side wins and they do things. That's how democracy works, right? If it was only everything that we thought that should be done for everybody, that wouldn't be a democracy. That would be an authoritative regime, you know, maybe a communist regime, right? A one-party system. We don't have that here. So when your side or our side or my side, when it loses, that becomes a part of democracy, right? So everything that we're experiencing right now, even if we disagree, even if they're screwing it up, even if they're pucking it up, mugging it up, that is democracy in action. And one of the things that I'm seeing is a lot of people is upset with what's going on with the Department of Education, and I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. And I'm not gonna play the other video that I found today about when we had our own schools and our own education system and how well we did and how well we performed. But I did find this brother that I follow right here. He speaks about history a lot, and I'm gonna play his video. And then what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna play an older video that Hoffman dropped on his page about a week ago. And what I want you to see if there's any parallels between what's happening now and 20 years ago. All right.
The Department of Education is being split among 4 different agencies. They're cutting it, most notably moving it into the Department of Labor. This is the completion of a 70-year project to roll back integration, to stop us from critically thinking, and to teach us how to work for corporations. I knew this was going to happen as soon as they started banning Black history. And here's why. In the 70s and 80s, started getting a little integrated. And that's when the anti-government movement starts. Corporate elites started funding think tanks. Think Cato Institute, ALEC, the Heritage Foundation. You know the people that created Project 2025. They said get education out of government and into the private market. They called it choice, even freedom. But what they knew is that if profit drove the education system, then they could resegregate it. They could shape what education looks like. And they could stop us from teaching ourselves how to be self-sufficient. In the late 70s, there were tax revolts. White conservatives led a movement to slash state taxes. In California, we reduced our property tax to 1%. Sounds good, right? But we slashed funding to education because of it. I see you, Texas, following the same playbook as Cali. So when public schools started to decline, charter schools popped up in the 90s. Charter schools are publicly funded, meaning the real public schools get less money. Yet charter schools were privately managed with little to no accountability and corporate-style governance. Are you comfortable with your tax dollars being spent on a private business you have no control over? They shifted the narrative that education is a public good to a consumer product. Now, what does all this have to do with Black history? Well, the main thing they don't want you to know about is slavery. And it ain't like we love talking about slavery, but we did go through it. When you study slavery, you learn about how laws were made to make it legal, how science was fabricated to make it rational, how capitalism was built by it. It exposes the unchallenged power structure of the West that oppresses all of us. The reason the masses are suffering to this day. That is why they don't want you to learn our history. They don't want you to know how to think. They want you to know how to work for them. That's why education is moving to the Department of Labor. So the Department of Education.
So they are moving the education department to the Department of Labor, right? Which is wild. Probably won't be as bad as you think it is, but that is wild, right? But the reframing when you move education around is a real actual thing. And one of the things, something that I discovered in my 40s and embarrassing to kind of understand, was we always hear about the transatlantic slave trade, right? Well, one, slave is the wrong word. We weren't slaves. We were enslaved. They ended up creating chattel slavery, but we were not slaves. We were enslaved people. But we were not just enslaved people. We actually were, we had war declared against us because most of us come from the west coast of Africa, which at that time was called the Gold Coast. And the Gold Coast was some tribes that was confederated, but it was mostly tribes, larger kingdoms, smaller kingdoms. But each tribe had a chief, and that chief was a de facto king. We use the term chief, but chief is just like a king, right? So because of xenophobia, we don't look at the word chief in the same way we look at the word emperor or king or pharaoh, right? So we have kind of cheapened a chief to almost to be the same thing as a colonel, in a sense. But a chief is a king. So that was the west coast of Africa. And what happened is the European nations, Portugal, Spain, the UK, the Netherlands. I can't remember what was the name of that kingdom back then. They might have been the Netherlands. But they basically created a confederation, right? An alliance, and they invaded Africa. So it was actually a war. It wasn't a trade. But because they control the education system, we have been taught that it is the transatlantic slave trade. We're not taught that it is actually World War Zero, right? That's not what we're taught. That it was actually an attack on the African kingdoms, right? But anyway, that's not what this is about. What this is about is Hoffman made a video, and I want you to listen to the verbiage in this video. I want you to just listen. The title of this is When George Wallace Ignited the South. And I want you to tell me if you see any parallels here.
People of the United States, if he promises something, he does it.
Lou, what do you think if he does decide to run and runs? I think of course, the national ticket's going to try to keep him off, but what would you think about him running as an independent. What do you think along that line?
I think that he has a good chance regardless of what ticket he runs on. So I think if people are going to making up the mind to vote for the man and not for the...
Well, I believe that people have gotten to the point now where that they want some old-fashioned constitutional government where the people have something to say about how the government's run, and I think George Wallace is a man that will bring that trend back in America. And that's why I think that if he can get on the ballot, that there's no doubt that he will either be elected or else that he will put the election in the House of Representatives, because he'll carry enough weight all across the nation, not only just in the South, because they're going to see what kind of man he is. And he does stand for these things and means what he said.
Okay, this is the origins of Make America Great Again, right? It's crazy how close the verbiage is. But this is the eerie part right here. This is the part that this is the part where I was like, all right, this is almost verbatim.
What's established in this matter and the great federal pressure.
If I were the President of the United States, you can rest assured that there would be a reversal. I would point different people to the courts, oriented differently toward the Constitution. I wouldn't want to control the court system. We should have an independent judiciary, but we don't have one now.
You hear that? We don't have an independent judiciary. We have activist judges. This is 1968, guys. This is damn near 60 years ago.
In my judgment, we have one that has, instead of being independent, instead of being a judiciary that has used judicial restraint, they have now imposed their notions about what the Constitution ought to be upon the people of Alabama and of Georgia. And if I were the president, I would take every bureau in Washington out of the school business. And I would say to the people of Atlanta and of Georgia, you run your schools like you want to run them. I have no recommendation to make to you, but I've got confidence in you, the people. And after all, that's what the liberals are always saying, the people. Well, if they believe in the people, why not let the people of Georgia run their school system? Is it that the people of Georgia, though, are not who they're talking about? I think that's true. They're talking about the...
Sound went out. Come on. Can y'all hear me? Let's see it. 249 mark.
Well, I really think that he should be on.
But if they believe in the people, why not let the people of Georgia run their school system? Is it that the people of Georgia, though, are not who they're talking about? I think that's true. They're talking about the people in the so-called intelligentsia echelons that think they have more wisdom and more ability than does the auto worker in Atlanta, or the textile worker in Georgia, or the sheet metal worker, or the barber, the beautician, the farmer, the fireman, the policeman. But these people, the truck driver, the little farmer, the little businessman, but these people themselves have more wisdom about how matters ought to run.
Now, mind you, all the people that he named, right, instead of him just saying, Euro-Americans, he's pointing out all the people that works, right? And he's making them feel like that all these people, I am speaking up for you, right? But the truth of the matter is, every role that he named, there's no black people in these roles. Also remember, this is 1968, so you don't have a ton of immigrants in this country at this time. So the issue that you're dealing with right now is a wholly black American issue, right? The descendants of enslaved kingdoms of Africa, right? And the codification of whiteness at this time, because you got to remember, you're about 35 years post-immigration of through the whole Ellis Island experience that America had, and you are about 20 years post-World War II, which also caused a huge immigration into this country, right? So everybody's coming into this country, but the problem that he's speaking on, he's like, yo, we're talking to the firemen, the policemen, the auto worker, all these other people, right? These are not roles at this time that really black Americans have, right? So he's framing this that it's 100%, hey, the codification of whiteness that we have going on in this country right now versus the blacks who've been here longer than a lot of people that just got here in the last 30 years, right? So just think of that when he's saying this.
Every day than do these intellectual incompetents that today have destroyed race relations and have destroyed local government in our country, and even advanced the idea that you can advocate the victory of the enemy in Vietnam over our servicemen under the guise of academic freedom. We average folks don't understand that, and the academic intellectual incompetence are going to get run over one of these days by the people of this country.
This is part of a typical day's mail to the Wallace Campaign National Headquarters here in Montgomery. Some 250 to 1,000 pieces of mail a day arrive at this headquarters, and most of the mail has money in it. And of course, money is needed to run a campaign of this size.
In Auburn, seat of Alabama's well-regarded Polytechnic Institute, we talked to young supporters of George Wallace.
Especially as native Alabamians particularly, we are proud of George Wallace, and we also think he's a very capable man, and he has done so much for our state. He has raised the educational level, and just overall, we think that he's the man for the job.
Well, this is our world. We're the ones to inherit this world. And George Wallace, Lyndon Johnson, Ronald Reagan, Romney, the rest of them will pass on. They'll leave it to us. And so what they make will be what they leave to us, and what kind of world they leave to us. And I believe George Wallace is the type of man that will leave.
Now, I hope y'all didn't miss that he mentioned Ronald Reagan, and I hope y'all also do not miss that this is the late 60s. This is like the height of the civil rights movement. I didn't go back to research whether or not this is post or pre Dr. King's assassination, but he mentions Ronald Reagan here, right? And remember, this is the whole, this is the formation of basically the intelligence agency. So Dick Cheney, Henry Kissinger, George Bush Sr. But that's what's happening during this time frame here. But I hope y'all didn't miss that he mentioned Ronald Reagan, which is a good 12 years before Ronald Reagan was actually elected president.
To this country, a world we can be proud of. Not a world that they'd like for you to believe where there's prejudice and bias for a man. I've never hated another man in my whole life, just pure hating because, and I don't even know him. Because I've always tried to, my folks brought me up to try to be a Christian, and I believe that way. And that's another thing I believe that has been a breakdown in this country is of young people trying to...
Bill don't like a liar. But you see how the conversation is very, very similar to the conversation now. Almost to the fact that you have to assume that when they came up with Project 2025, that everything from the Southern Strategy, right, which is going to be the Strom Thurmond, George Wallace, Lee Atwater, all those guys, this is the playbook that they implemented here.
That law comes first before any law.
We're going to turn the schools back to the people of Georgia and let you determine the educational policies of your own child. Now, if the candidates don't say that, then as far as I'm concerned, there's not a dime's worth of difference in any one of them. So we've got to have not only the candidate, but he's going to have to run on the proper platform. And we're tired of generalities and platitudes. And if you're going to elect somebody who looks good on television, who sounds good, who makes a sweet sounding speech, and has a fine voice.
Notice everything that he said. I also remember this is 1968. Look who they elected. Because George Wallace did not become president of the United States, obviously, thank God. But Ronald Reagan sounded good, looked good, said all the right things. I mean, the guy was an actor, right? But this goes back to what I always say, right? Every accusation is a confession.
Well, you could elect Walter Cronkite, or you could elect Huntley and Brinkley, or you could elect some of the national newscasters. If you're going to elect people on how they sound on television, that's not going to suit us. And as it stands now, there's not a dime's worth of difference in the leadership of both national parties, and I don't believe there's going to be a dime's worth of difference in their platforms in 1968. And if there's not, then I'm going to be in Georgia and I'm going to be throughout the country and give the people a chance to express themselves.
The body scanner reveals the brutal truth about your body that your regular scale will never tell you. For weeks, my scale showed up.
So one of the things that I like to just point out here, right, and then I'm going to hop off here. One of the things that I want to point out here is that the conversation is exactly the same today as it was almost 60 years ago. So at least 55 years ago, right? We're going to take the schools over. We're going to change the way the education is taught. We're going to remove the departments that you guys have. A lot of these organizations were created, you know, like our first guy, Historian 3 said, right? Heritage Foundation, Cato Institute, all these basically to recreate the news and to recreate the narrative. But when I listen to this clip, and we know that the Department of Education is under attack right now, right? Or not even under attack, right? It was the first place, right? When Linda McMahon was made the Secretary of Education, you know, in 2016, there was this attack, you know, against education. And it is about hiding information. It is about, you know, not promoting an African-American forward in this country for whatever reason. For whatever reason, this country has the way that it feels towards African-American. But what we're going to have to do is, we just had not even the midterm. We just had the off-season elections. In 2026, we all need to make a concerted effort to make sure that everybody that we know is registered to vote and votes. Black people voting rates need to be at 90% in this country, because you're in a country where you really don't have true representation. And what they're going to do right now, what they're trying to do right now, is take back every simple thing that was given to you in the 60s that you fought for, right? They just want to roll it back, because your influence does matter, right? People learning real history does matter. And we know that people don't learn real history, and it can be changed on us, because, again, we called a world war, a worldwide invasion of a confederation of countries against one place in the world, right? We call that the transatlantic slave trade. And that's not what it was. It was an invasion. It was a war. It was several nations against several smaller nations that was not expecting a war. It was unprovoked. And due in part to that is part of the reason why we do not have the rights that we have in this country, because we aren't migrants, right? We're not migrants. We're not immigrants, right? And they wanted to think that we were commodities. We weren't. We was prisoners of war. And that part is just something that they really, really don't want us to know, because if we were prisoners of war, well, every country that has been defeated and attacked through war, even if they lost, receives some sort of, you know, Marshall Plan in order to rebuild, right? Look at what Japan is today versus what it would have been if the war never happened. Look at what Germany is today versus what it would have been if the war never happened, right? Even China. I mean, look at the coastline of China compared to what it would have been if Japan never would have invaded it, right? But when you look at the West African nations, they never got that help back, right? When you look at the prisoners of war, their descendants never got that help. So it's intentional to dismantle the Department of Education. The only way we're going to get around that, we're not going to get around it by protesting in the streets. No one cares. We're going to have to vote. We're going to have to become a political state, right? If we don't have an actual home state, we got to become at least a political state. And that's all I got tonight, fam, man. I hope y'all enjoyed it. You know, we opened up with the preference. New pod did drop. Let's see here. What did we talk about on the pod yesterday? Actually, we talked about democracy. Talked about the iTrades popping up. Boosie on tricking is how we opened up. Really, as a retired trick. Am I a retired trick, or am I just a trick on pause? Okay. As a trick on pause, I don't have a problem with tricking. Tricking is different from simping, though. Talked about Olandria, about the men doing the bare minimum, I guess, when they're not black. Let's see here. Men discussing cheating about 40 minutes in. And then we talked about the Native Land podcast and this idea of anti-intellectualism versus intellectuals. Why it's such a bad thing. Then we wrapped it up with Jamar Chase spitting on Jalen Ramsey and like, yeah, you can't do that, bro. Hey, Kevin, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it, bro. Glad you popped in. I like finding these old videos, man, and just bringing them in. Like Wednesday nights, I was just like, it's something that I like. I love history. I love studying like religions and like psychology of like why people do what they do. So a lot of these old videos, man, it's just sometimes I'm in awe because I'm like, what would you have done in the 80s and 90s, right? Because you would know something, but you really wouldn't have any way to prove it, right? Like you'd have to find newspaper articles, and then now you're talking about writer's bias. Like, what would we do if we didn't have, everything archived in YouTube? And it's sort of scary when they want to dismantle that, and they want to make these these language learning models basically teach according to how they want you to learn. It's a scary space, a scary place to be in right now. So I don't know what the next 30, 40 years looks like, but, thank God that we do have people. We can get George Wallace's own words and we can match his words directly to the current president's words and kind of be like, hey, y'all talking to the same guy or y'all at least reading the same book. And we don't have to be gaslit into, well, that's fake news. Like, no, we just listen to George Wallace say it for itself. And it's the exact same thing that y'all saying right now. And we're not morons, so you can't gaslight us on this. All right. But I appreciate everybody, that popped in tonight. I'm going to go ahead and hop off here, man. God bless. Hey, go check out the pod. Hey, we are working on getting the Discord changed around a little bit and working on the Patreon. So we have some exciting things coming, working in on the background. 2026 is going to be the year. Appreciate all y'all. And, hey, man, y'all have a good night, man. Holla at your boy.